This is Verified, a show that debunks fake news from across Africa and beyond. My name is Linda Ngari.
And I am Calvin Rock. But first, a little lesson on terms and trends in the world of fake news.
Well, Calvin, we have previously looked into terms like misinformation, misinformation, and malinformation.
Yes, right.
But today we look at the term infodemic. From the sound of the name, which rightfully rhymes with the terms pandemic or epidemic, an infodemic occurs when an outbreak is occurring.
Yeah.
While the rest may stand for a disease outbreak, an infodemic occurs when there's some sort of information outbreak.
Okay.
This was common during the COVID-19 pandemic, where there was a lot of half-truths, truths, and at times outright lies about the virus. And speaking of which, Calvin, over the weekend, I learned that the word virus in Spanish means, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Your guess is as good as mine.
It means your guess is as good as mine.
Right. In loose translation from Spanish, it means your guess is as good as mine, which I guess goes back to our topic on misinformation, say for something like the COVID-19 virus, where there was a lot of unknown things.
Missing information.
Right, about the COVID-19 pandemic.
Sure.
Because your guess is as good as mine. We've never seen this before, and we are only beginning to learn about it.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so an infodemic, we could say that in the current political environment in Kenya, where we are headed to the August 9th elections, we're in some sort of political infodemic.
Yeah, it appears to be that so much information from the politicians and about the politicians is often just so outrageous. So probably most of that information is often fake news, false, outrageous even. That
is right. Another fact alert. The former US President Donald Trump, for all his candidness for freedom of expression and his popularity on Twitter, was found to have shared at least 30,000 pieces of false and misleading claims over his 4 years of presidency. This is according to a post on the Washington Post.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, candidness and misinformation in the same sentence? Mm-hmm. Any wonder he was kicked out of Twitter.
Right. And speaking of presidents who are pro-Twitter, to a point that they're kicked out, our own President Kenyatta is not a huge fan of the platform. And this is what he thinks about it.
Mimi sio mtu ya hiyo hata Twitter mnaona na hiyo mimi niliondoka huko. Ngaona hii kitu ni bure ni matusi tu, hakuna kitu kingine inaendelea hapa.
What President Uhuru Kenyatta says is that he left Twitter because he found it too full of insults. Linda, do you think Twitter is full of insults?
To some level, yes. It has brought down huge men like Trump.
It has really?
And it has really brought about a lot of, I guess it's called character assassination.
Yeah, sure.
Based on misinformation about people. So I think it has the potential of ruining even a president.
Mm-hmm. Loosely, this is what he said. You stay up all night, reading Twitter, losing sleep over people's comments, making phone calls. I'd rather sleep, wake up, and go to work. But that's just him.
Right. At Piga Firimbi, we found numerous scenarios where politicians would lie to the public at rallies, press briefings, and even on their individual social media platforms, bring us back to the point on infodemics around a politically volatile
environment.
Yeah, like the one Kenya is. For example, when the fuel prices in Kenya began to spike, Deputy President William Ruto held a press conference, and this is what he said.
How come that fuel in Uganda is cheaper than fuel in Kenya?
Linda, is it true that fuel in Uganda was much cheaper than fuel in Kenya?
Well, this is untrue. At the time the Deputy President was making this speech, in April 2022, fuel prices in Kenya, for example, a litre of petrol, was at 134 Kenya shillings, and a litre of diesel was at 115 Kenya shillings.
Piga Firimbi contrasted this with the prices in Uganda at the time. We found that a litre of petrol at that time in Uganda retailed at 5,100 Ugandan shillings, which translates to 165 Kenyan shillings. On the other hand, a litre of diesel retailed at 4,400 Ugandan shillings, which translates to 142 Kenyan shillings. So essentially, at the time, fuel in Uganda was much more expensive than fuel in Kenya. Also, looking at the Deputy President's speech at the Chatham House on March 7th, we found inaccuracies in his statements.
When explaining the challenge of access to credit for Kenyan entrepreneurs, William Ruto said that 15 million Kenyans are blacklisted with the Credit Reference Bureau, that is the CRB, for defaulting loans. He said that this figure represents more than half of Kenya's work population.
Well, Linda, to start with, 15 million is not more than half of Kenya's working population. Also, it's quite an interesting number. It's sensational to say the least. 15 million Kenyans blacklisted on CRB. That will imply at least a quarter of Kenya's population. That means that 1 in every 4 persons is blacklisted on CRB. But is this true? No, it isn't. 15 million refers to the number of blacklisted accounts and not the number of blacklisted people. It's worth noting that one person can have multiple accounts that are blacklisted, say from loan apps and SACCOs, or even bank loans that are blacklisted.
Interesting. And still on the ongoing infodemic, Piga Firimbi also found images shared on Raila Odinga Jr.'s verified account. In a tweet where he claimed to show a huge crowd that showed up for presidential aspirant Raila Odinga's political rally at Mombasa's Tononoka grounds in February 2022, he actually used images from a 2017 rally. We found that the same image had been shared in March 2017 on Raila Odinga's Twitter account when campaigning for the August 2017 general elections.
Linda, I think that was an ingenious political gimmick, but that's what we are here for, to debunk the fake news.
True.
Now, finally, there is the claims by the gubernatorial aspirant for Nairobi, Polycarp Igathe. This is what he claims.
So for sure, there's conversations that are taking place at the leadership level about the city county of Nairobi, 40% of Kenya's GDP.
His claim on the gross domestic product of Nairobi is that the gross domestic product for Nairobi is 40%. Linda, is this true?
Well, he claims that Nairobi generates 40% of the country's GDP.
Yeah.
But that is not true. The most recent and reliable data from the KNBS gross county domestic product shows that it's almost half of what Polycarp Igathe claimed at 21.7%.
Wow, that's a huge chunk of mid-information.
True. So, just in case you missed it, Nairobi does not generate 40% of Kenya's GDP, but
21.7%.
Right. You can find more detailed versions of each of these fact checks on our website, pigafirimbi.africauncensored.online.
And remember to just take about everything you hear with a pinch of salt. Did you hear or see any false claims that you like verified? You can find us on our socials.
Share the claim with us on our Twitter handle at Piga Firimbi. Until next time, I have been your host, Linda Ngari.
And I am Calvin Rock.